So I was going to okay, so we'll get started here on a lure video. People have been asking about my lures that I make, and I wanted to give some information and some tips. So welcome to the fish room, and here I wanted to start with a selection of bodies and blades and lures that I use. This group here has quite a bit of stock in it from Panther Martin. Oh, this is a MEPS type blade with a clevis. Look, that's a big one. And then a variety of bodies, gold and silver. I've moved away from colored painted bodies just because I haven't found that they make any real difference, but I do have an assortment of the different sizes and weights, which I think is important for lure making. And here's a smaller MEPS type blade that requires a clevis. And then I have some of the big old Panther Martin ones that I use. So what I'm going to do in this video, I'm not just going to show you stuff by hand, but I'm going to try to go through exactly what I do to make the different size lures. And I'm not going to take too much time about it, but I'm going to set some samples up, various weights, and then we'll crunch a few of them in the lure tool that I have. So, see you in a moment. Okay, so what you're seeing here is the approximate makeup of the different size lures that I make. So starting from this big one here, which is the size 18. It's greater than a ½ ounce altogether. You can see there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parts, 6 parts with the wire that go into making the lures. And this one has an extra bead because this blade is so big that there'll be space to converge the two beads, the body and the blade, all together with the hook. On these bigger lures I use a size 6 eagle claw hook, and these are the hooks that I use if you wanted to get these same ones. I think any size 6 hook that you're confident in that's nice and sharp will work fine. On the smaller lures I use a size 10, and these go on the 2 4s and 6s. I used to use this size hook exclusively, but I've changed that because I think the smaller hooks have gotten beat up sometimes. On all the lures that I make, I use a solid metal bead. Don't use a hollow bead. I don't like them. They get worn and edged. If you use a stock Panther Martin, they use split bearings, and they always eventually wear out and the lure blade clicks. So I like the solid metal bead, and I've used them at various sizes based on the size of the lure, just to get them closely arranged so that everything will fit in a decent manner. And you can see the gradient is easy to see there in the different sizes. So across the bottom you can see the 3 larger hooks. Here you can see the 3 smaller hooks for the 3 smaller blades, and then the larger blades. And again, this corresponds with sizes of 16th ounce through a ½ ounce, larger than a ½ ounce. And I'll go ahead and put these together, and then we'll come back and see them made. The other thing that I do is I've been in the habit of adding these plastic tails, and this is what the plastic tails are, cream lure mini tails. And they come in a variety of sizes, colors. I get the ones that are the smallest, the mini tail, and I really like these because I used to fletch hooks a lot, and I stopped doing that, and it saves a ton of time. So what I'll do is I'll tie these up and come back when I'm ready to crunch a few of them. Thanks. Okay, so there's a picture of the wire tying jig that I use, and it's pretty straightforward application. I mean, you've got a twister to do the end knots. This does the looping on this arm, and then that secures the hooks through the bend jig there. So what I'll do is I'll start with a small one first, and so I've got the bare wire here, and I'm going to take those parts from the first ones, and I'm going to start with the blade, of course. Blade's on, and then you got the bead. I'll show you this as I go. It's kind of hard to get everything down here in front of you, especially with these little parts. But there you see the bead and the blade, and then I use a washer when I'm using these smaller lead bodies, because if you don't, that bead will, that solid bead will cut into the weight. And then you simply just add on the body. You can see that one's a little bit small. I would actually like a little bit smaller body, but that's spinning nicely. And for the purposes here, I think this one will be fine. And then first thing you do is you make the loop. I always size them to about the bottom of the lure body, and you get that in the jig on the arm, and you curl it over. You want to come, I'm used to doing this, but that's about to where you want to come to, so that you get a nice square hole. Okay, there you see it. And then I'm going to trim that tab. And then I'm going to place on the small hook. Okay, pretty basic. And then to tie that hook on, put it back in the jig here, and I gently hold, and then you just twist it a few times. And your result is your finished lure. So that'll work fine. I'll set that up on the paper. And I'm going to repeat the process now, and this is with a size 4. Got it back. And this is actually a refurbished size 4 Panther Martin blade. And put the blade on. This one I don't need to use a washer. I'll show you again. The bead goes on because that's the bearing. The body goes on. And you can see this one spins really nice. That gives you an idea of the effect you want. Okay, and then it's the same process. I kind of line them up. I always kind of come arm to the body. Sometimes I'll go a little tighter. It just depends on what type of setup I have. Oh, there's a mistake. That's always fun. I have the camera in front of me, folks, so I'm normally not operating a camera when I do this, so it makes it a little challenging here, but I'll line it back up, and you bend it to the right amount, which is right about there. You can see that's a nice solid V, and then I will trim the tab, and I will take my hook, put my hook on, there you see it, slide the eyelet through, just like that, right, and on this there's a little groove in the jig there, so the hook's going to stay out of the way that way, and then you just tie it up, works really nicely. Nice action on that one. And now going up in size, again I'm going to start with the bare wire. This is a Panther Martin gold blade. And then I'll grab the bead. So the bead's on there. You always got to have a bead there or they won't spin right. So I've got the bead, and then I've got this gold body. And again, you can see that that's spinning nicely. Now this one has some overlap here, so I'm going to add a plastic bead. I like the bottom of my lure to come down flush with the blade, so hopefully you can see what I'm talking about there. I use a variety of different beads, and in this case I'll show you these red plastic beads. So these beads, there's some big ones and there's some little ones, so I'm not going to put that size bead on. That's an 8 mil, but I am going to take this size bead. And so with that size bead now, you can see that the blade falls nicely in line with the bottom of the lure, and that's what's going to work. That's what's going to work the best. And so now it's the same process. You get the machine in. I always get it tight there to the bearing, so that's about right. And it's in there solidly, and I'll go through on my bend. And again, if you buy one of these, it takes you a while to learn exactly where to bend and how to do it. I've done them enough times that I'm pretty certain on them. This is an indisposable tool. If you're going to make them by hand, you need a nice round nose pliers. I would suggest one a little bigger than this, just so that it's more sturdy. But if I had bent that too far, I can put it on here and I can tweak it a little bit. But that looks right. So I'll trim the tab. And then this still gets a small hook because of this size lure. So there you see it. And now I'll get it on the jig. And again, when I'm making a bunch of lures, if somebody's going to buy some, or when it's the right times of the season just to get some extra lures done, you can see that one spins really nicely too. So that looks really, really good to me. And that's the size 6 Panther Martin, or a 1/4 ounce lure. And so now we move on to a number 9. And again, I'm going to take the blade in the body. I'm just going to, or the blade in the wire, and I'm going to get that on there. And I'm going to take the bead, and I'm using a little bit larger bead here because this particular body has a slightly larger hole on it, and you don't want the bead to be impeded. So when I put that on there, you can see it still is well above the rim there, so it's going to spin nicely, and it does spin very nicely. And this body, you know, when it gets down to that much, I'm going to leave that one be. If I had a bigger, I do have a bigger bead, but I like this bead for this blade. I could put one of those small red ones in there, but I think I'm just going to leave this one bare. So I'll come down, and all that's left is to get the depth right, and then bring it over, right about there, and yeah, that looks real good. So we'll trim the tab. If you're going to make lures, you want to have a nice, get yourself a nice new diagonal vise cutter. it just makes things a lot easier. If you had a German nose pliers like this, you certainly could make them all by hand. I can tell you it's murder on your fingers to do this stuff though. So again, take a look at the pliers, see how you might go about getting that type of tool done for yourself. But you can do them by hand, and you can use a normal pliers, but it'll end up looking ugly. So when I get to the bigger size 6 hooks, that's when I add the mini tails. So this being a silver lure, I'm going to go ahead and do a mini tail like that, I think. So we'll get that out of here. And when you pull these out of the pack, they come, with a full loop on the top, so it's got to be trimmed, and I trim those tails. So I'll do a slight cut here. And a slight cut at the head on the top. And so you see now how that's turned out. It's trimmed up, and now the hook can go through. And to put the hook through, it's very basic. Push the hook through. And I always go around. It just seems to work out perfectly that it's 3 per treble hook. So there it is on there. Okay, so now it's just the same process to finish up the lure. The hook's on, and I'll set the hook in the jig and tighten up the jig. So there you have there you get a nice lure with a good look at it. So that one spins really nice. And now, not last but not least, or not least or last, but now we're going to go with a size 15, which is a MEPS 5 or a Vibrax 5, and it's a 1/2 ounce lure altogether. So you can see a nice shiny gold blade there, and you always start by putting the blade through. I picked a silver bead, but I picked a silver bead. That's no big deal. Fish don't care about that. And then on this body, you can see the hole here is slightly larger than the hole there. So I want to use the hole that's smaller to hold on to the bead. And with that bead and that body, you can see what I'm talking about there. That is perfect depth. So I'm not going to add any plastic bead to that. And that just looks great. I mean, it's spinning fantastic. So we'll go ahead and crimp it over. Again, these bigger ones, sometimes your sizing here is the blade likes to hang up a little bit, but blade over. That looks real good. And I'll trim the tag. And I think I'm using one of those hooks, so we'll pick out another mini tail. And I think I'll use this nice bright yellow one here. If I used split rings on these, I could replace the tails and the hooks at will. I can tell you though, these mini tails do not last forever. After casting for a couple outings, they need to be replaced anyhow. So you're not saving any tails. They're just going to wear out. Even sometimes when the fish hit them, they'll rip them right off sometimes and eat them. So you're not going to save any tails, and by the time a hook is used a couple outings, how I fish, there's almost no point. I mean, I can get one sharpening out of a hook, sometimes 2 sharpenings depending on how bent up they are. But I'm going to lock this one down. Where's the tab? Get that in the jig. And once it's flush, you just go ahead and crank it down. And now you can see how that one turned out. Pretty good spin on that one. It's the 1/2 ounce, and then so the last one we have is the biggest one. And so this is a real big blade. This is what I've been using though since April. May is this real big one. Some of the 15s too, but certainly by August on, this is what I was using, this big size 8 blade. And on this sucker, because I want something heavy that's going to sink, I'm going to use a much bigger bead. You can see it there. And then I'm going to use a much heavier body. And this teardrop body is pretty basic. You can see when that comes down. And actually, I like the distance on that one. I was thinking I might put one of those big 8mm purple beads on there, but I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm just going to leave this one be. Let me look at that again. Yeah, that's plenty enough. That's close enough. So again, these are the ones you've been seeing me catch fish on. And so we'll go ahead and get the bend to put in it. And again, I get nice and tight to the bottom. You don't want these to get so long that you can't do casting without tangling. That one I might have gone too far. No, I think it's fine. I'm going to cut the tab. And I think for this one we'll go with the hot pink. Got a couple of nice different colors, but I haven't used much of this pink. So I'll give that a shot. It's pink and white, so you can get an idea of what they look like. Again, I made the 2 cuts so that the hook can easily be inserted. I cut the top off and then I trimmed them a little bit because none of them need to be as long as they are when they come off from when they come out of the bag. They're all too long. And that all looks real good. So we'll slide the hook on. We'll fit the jig in. Again, this doesn't take any tremendous effort here. It's not hard to twist that wire, even though it's nice and thick wire. Come on, you. There we go. Spinning nicely. Okay, so then now this shows you then the lures that we just made. And I'll flip that up just so it's a little more readable. And so you can see we go from a size 2 blade, 4 blade, 6, 9, 15, and 18. These lures, this size, is usually being used in January. January on the coldest of cold days when the fish absolutely won't bite. Sometimes you got to go that size low. 4s, much more common in January as well. I even have some size 0s and 00s MEPs that I use, but I didn't make one of those. If it's real cold, I'll go as small as I can, and if they don't bite anything small, then I go home. But the 4s and 6s really are your January, February, March type of lures for Wisconsin streams. And then as things start to heat up in April, 9s, and then quickly into May, April, May, the 15 works well, and then the 18, like I said, I used from about May on. I don't think I ever got off of this size lure in most of the videos that you saw of mine. So, you know, it's season time's over right now, so it's kind of depressing. But you get to see me in the fish room in my natural element. So, you know, if you want to make your own lures, it's easy enough to do. The parts are cheaper. It's not like if I lose one, I'm thinking, oh man, I gotta go climb a log or risk my life or possibly drown because of a $4 lure. This gets them down to somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 for the big ones and less than $1 or right at $1 for the small ones. So it is a good, effective way to save a little bit of money. Of course, you see how much I've been fishing this year. I'm not saving any money fishing. I'm contributing to the economy. So I have one more trip north that I'm going to get out to, and hopefully the rain and the conditions will be decent enough to come across some steelhead or perhaps some cohos. So thanks for watching from Wisconsin Trout Fishing. I appreciate it, and happy fishing.